What are your cloud security priorities for your company? I'm James Erasmus at the TechCentral show, TC+, and I'm honored to have today in the studio Gary Peel. Gary Peel is a business development manager for Fortinet Africa. Gary, thank you very much for being here today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks, James. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Gary, let's jump straight into the importance of security. And, some of the challenges we're all aware of around security are often highlighted in some fascinating reports like the one which you've published recently, and I've delved into it. I look forward to suggesting our readers do the same. But what are some of the challenges you're seeing quite specifically here in South Africa and in relation to the global security posture and concerns?
Yeah, so I think if we just start off with generally what's happening in terms of the trends from a security perspective is there's a couple of things that we're noticing. So one, there's a massive convergence of network and security. So, the internet's been around for around 50 years. That's when they started developing and the architecture around the internet. And it hasn't changed. So we're seeing a lot of convergence that's coming from a security perspective that's then going into the network. Whereas previously, most of the spend was in network. So about 10 years ago, network comprised of about 70% of the budget versus 30% security. Today, it's about 60-40.
Okay.
By 2030, we're thinking that security-driven network will surpass network spend from a customer perspective, which puts Fortinet in a great position. The second thing is around consolidation. So when we look at consolidation, there's 2 points. So there's vendor consolidation, and security is in a fantastic space when it comes to lots of innovation, lots of new businesses, new startups. But typically these startups, from a security perspective, their end goal is to be acquired by a larger security vendor. So you've got endpoint security vendors, you've got network security vendors, and these vendors typically are looking for acquisitions in niche solutions that are developed by startups. Fortinet's view on it is slightly differently. So we do a lot of R&D internally.
I gather, yeah.
So we've got more patents than any one of our competition put together, all of our competition put together. So we've approached it a little bit differently, where we're not acquiring businesses, we're building that capability internally. And then the second part of the consolidation is around ecosystem consolidation. So Gartner's released a lot of papers where they talk about mesh architecture. And mesh architecture is the ability to ingest all of this data from all your various security solutions so that's broad, it's integrated, it's interoperable. So what we're going to be seeing is businesses out there that typically have 18 to 20 different point security solutions. They're going to be changing that architecture to be more of a consolidated platform approach, where they'll have about 4 to 6 platforms in their ecosystem that all can talk together and all share information with one another. So that consolidation is a huge factor going forward, and we think we're pretty well positioned in that space.
So in saying that the reliance becomes more on one or two solutions as opposed to too many solutions.
100%. And what we are telling our customers to really focus on when they're picking a security solution is, does that security solution have the ability to share information with other open systems out there? So that they get that full picture.
And we're quite specifically talking about cloud security and the importance of cloud security, and what does it look like globally, and what is the South African context with regards to cloud security at the moment?
Yeah, so I mean, if we talk first about cloud adoption in Africa versus the rest of the world. So cloud adoption is still very early in Africa. So if you look at the public cloud providers like Amazon, like Microsoft Azure, GCP, etc., they've just started landing data centers in South Africa over the last couple of years. When you go into Africa, that's the only footprint that we've got on the continent. So South Africa is a bit more mature than the rest of the continent, but it still lags significantly when it comes to cloud adoption versus the likes of the US and Europe. when it comes to security of that cloud, it's even more important to get that visibility across the ecosystem. So when we talk about cloud to our customers, we're making sure that they've got full visibility across their entire ecosystem, so across their own data center, across the public cloud, across any internet-based software solutions. And gaining that visibility is incredibly important for customers so that they can make choices around how they secure their ecosystem.
And there's clearly a trend to move from on-prem to cloud, or a hybrid of the two, and that mix is becoming more prevalent and must bring with it its own risks.
Definitely. When you look at the barriers of cloud adoption, it's really focused around a couple of things. It's your standard, your people, your process, and your technology.
Of course.
People are the biggest blockers when it comes to adopting new technology, because
And let's just touch on that, because I think when you say people, we were talking very much so about skills, the resources, actually physically having them present, and the expertise behind those presenteeisms.
Absolutely. And just remember, we're living in this global ecosystem now. So resources in South Africa can very much be repurposed for projects in the US or projects in Europe, where they potentially have more budget to allocate. So we're fighting a global battle with resources here in South Africa. So cloud adoption, I think, if you look at it 10, 15 years ago, they thought, lots of businesses would be all in from a cloud perspective. And it's just not happening at the pace that they thought it would happen. It's still massively growing globally, but it's not many people are going all in on cloud. And the reason is it's a change control process, right? So you've got to change the people, the way that they work, the way that they consume technology when it comes to getting the best out of cloud. I mean, we speak to customers on a daily basis, and it's interesting in the cloud security report that we released that cost is not one of the big adoption barriers, but we often speak to customers around, what's their thoughts about how they're consuming cloud, and cost is a big factor. And typically, customers, you've got a choice, right? So you can either move fast and quick and be agile and migrate those workloads very quickly, or you could be slow and deliberate. Slow and deliberate obviously allows you to architect the applications a little bit differently, so that there's more cost effectiveness built into the application to deliver that application.
Gotcha. And, one of the interesting things I read in a report which, surveyed nearly 800 people globally, and it brought back a lot of really valuable insights, was that, and even here in South Africa, despite the economic headwinds we face, up to, I think it was 60% of those who were questioned said that they're going to increase their spend on cloud security by 33%.
Yeah, well, I always say, security is not cheap, or it's not free, but it's a hang a lot cheaper than a data breach.
Sure.
And I think businesses are starting to realize that. There's this classic example, and it may not be cloud security, but it's security in general, where Target was breached about 10 years ago. The numbers on that breach are astronomical. So, and it's just so simple. And unfortunately, we're making the same mistakes over
Hindsight.
and over. But it started with one of their HVAC suppliers. Obviously had access to the network, logged on to his PC, downloaded some malware. They got into the network. They then traversed the network, finally got into the point of sale system for Target over the busiest Christmas period.
Yeah.
In that 2 weeks, they stole 40 million credit card details and 70 million personal customers' information. That's somebody like Target that has the best of everything when it comes to security, and they got compromised. That breach cost them, they estimate, about $291 million.
Doesn't bear thinking of, but the mitigating costs are far less. And what it takes is for our listeners and your clients to listen to what your advice is, understand what the world is doing, understand what the circumstances are, and understand what the benefits are. You talked about agility, but there's also that need for businesses to be creative and flexible and dynamic. And digital transformation is something that everyone's experiencing or wanting to experience or going through, whether they want it to happen to them or not. How do they embrace the cloud in the most effective manner in order to pull out those benefits whilst being secure?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, James. And there's this theory around migrating the applications to the cloud and doing your due diligence first and creating guardrails. They call them landing zones, etc. We don't see enough of that happening locally because businesses are moving too quickly without setting those foundations. There's some basic foundations that you need to put in place in terms of these landing zones that you create in these cloud environments, which give you that foundation to then act quickly and be agile and move your workloads into. And incorporating network security and cloud posture management into these landing zones is critical for then to allow the developers somewhat of a bit of freedom in terms of applying building blocks to build their applications in a secure manner.
Now, changing tack a little bit, we've had Fortinet on this podcast a few times, and one of the more recent and fascinating conversations around go back to people, and people being often the first challenge to overcome, is the skill set, science, technology, engineering, and maths. Bringing people through that education, empowering them to understand the importance of cloud, the importance of security, and how to marry those two skills is something Fortinet does very, very well. What is some of the other activities that you, especially representing Fortinet Africa, do, and what does Fortinet bring to South Africa?
Yeah, another great question. I mean, when you look at Fortinet and how long we've been in the country and representing from a brand perspective, it's been very much close to a decade in South Africa, and obviously we've now expanded into Africa as well. Being a listed company, we've got shareholders, etc. But one of the important things that we obviously talk about a lot, both locally and internationally, is training.
Yeah.
So we invest a huge amount of money into training. We've got a full certification list from the most technical security engineers out there with NSE8 to any single person on the street being able to consume basic security training through our training portal, which we make available free of charge. So anyone out there can go on to fortinet.training and go to and do NSE 1, 2, and 3, which is just our basic level of training. And it's just really awareness of what to look out for from a personal perspective. We put an incredible amount of effort into training, our partners, our customers, but the general public as well, which is a massive, I think, something that often gets overlooked, and there should be a little bit more focus because it can impact you personally.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a huge amount of clutter in the system, but that sounds like a massive compliment to the system. So thank you, and I look forward to delving more into that myself, but also sharing that with colleagues and friends that understand the space but aren't necessarily sure where to start.
Yeah.
Globally, there's a huge shift in and we talked about this into the cloud. What are some other trends that came out of this report that you could perhaps elaborate on?
Yeah, so when you look at trends from a security perspective, the same culprits come up all the time. So we've spoken about people and skills, etc. Yeah. So making sure that your security engineers are skilled in securing cloud workloads is important. So we're seeing more and more customers increasing that cloud security training and bringing their security teams into these cloud conversations. I think typically when customers start this cloud journey, they sometimes forget about the security engineers because they're the on-premise guys that handle the security inside the data center. They've got nothing to do with the cloud because it's the developer's world, right?
Okay.
But this consistent and flow of tasks and information throughout the organization is what we're seeing increasing quite rapidly in South Africa from a engineering perspective. The other thing that we're looking at from a trends perspective is Fortinet is building out really specific cloud solutions to help our customers secure both their journey to the cloud as well as their applications that are in the cloud. So we've recently developed a cloud-native firewall, which allows us to get customers the same level of security that they enjoy from an on-premise perspective now in the cloud, but then providing all this agility and flexibility and rapidness of deployment through APIs, etc., for our technology.
And I'm hearing that removes a duplication of efforts.
It allows a customer to have the same security posture no matter where the workloads are sitting, which then decreases the cost and the complexity to deliver those solutions.
Okay. Brilliant, because, you talk about agility. I always start thinking about what do I do and in what order of priority. My guess is that there's some key priorities to this journey, and that you just described. Where would one start if, you talk about the individual, the small, the medium, and the large enterprises? They look at this report, they realize that they haven't actually considered what their cloud security priorities might be as a company, and that's the question I asked at the very beginning, and it poses some consideration. Practically, assuming that they are currently using a cloud platform that does have its own built-in securities, let's just say Google Workspace, for example, where do they start in engaging Fortinet or yourself?
It depends on what they want to secure. So if you look at companies that have got a strategy of just consuming SaaS services, so SaaS software as a service, you would want to get an understanding of the data that's sitting in the SaaS environment and whether there's any bad actors coming into that SaaS environment, etc. So, Fortinet can provide solutions across securing SaaS ecosystems. If a customer's got more of an infrastructure as a service play or a platform as a service play and is moving into more of the public cloud environment, we've got a whole suite of services available in terms of virtualizing our technology and providing it as part of a service offering. I think the biggest consideration for customers at this stage of our journey that we're seeing is really getting to understand or to get access to the right partners. So
let's unpack that a bit, please.
Yeah, so Fortinet is a partner-led business, right?
Okay.
So, because we've spent a lot of time educating, enabling the channel, etc., we've got a massive ecosystem of partners that are able to support our technology. We realized very early that we can't scale, right? It's very, very difficult to scale, so we use the channel to scale. And you've got a bunch of partners out there in South Africa, in Africa, that are skilled in both cloud and skilled in both security. Okay. Finding the right partner, I think, is the customer's biggest opportunity to streamline their cloud operations and then also secure those cloud operations.
Okay, so practically I would come to you with my anticipated concerns and what I think is my list of priorities, and you might then pair me up with that partner.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's partners that are maybe more skilled in operational technology, so the OT environment. There's partners that may be more on the SD-WAN side of things, or on the SecOps side of things, or on the cloud side of things. So, partners are specializing in these environments because it's becoming so critical to get the security element right. That they're investing heavily in this technology and specializing in it as well.
So if you haven't already, and you are currently, and you are considering what to do in order to prioritize your cloud security and to mitigate against some of the travesties and the disasters that can possibly happen with the risks, the breaches, the environment that's so fraught with cybersecurity, and you are in that cloud, you're journeying to the cloud, or you have a hybrid of the two. Either way, I highly recommend having a delve into the cloud security report published by Fortinet. I thoroughly have enjoyed this conversation, and I'd recommend considering some of the nuances that have been talked about today and see how they apply to your business. See how they might affect you if you were to perhaps ignore them and not prioritize them. So, Gary, from me, James Rasmus at the TechCentral Plus, thank you very much for having us today. Thanks for the fun conversation, and I've really enjoyed getting to understand this a bit more, and I look forward to delving into this a bit more myself and really unpacking some of those nuances in that report. Thank you.
Thank you, James. It's been an honor.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks.